You have no idea what the other person read this morning in their newsfeed, not paying attention, lying about paying attention, and really, truly living in our own silos. This is the problem with public opinion. 100,000 hours of deliberation, operating in 40 different countries, 35 different languages. What I'm going to share now is our AI-assisted deliberation platform. What's unique about it is it actually has no human moderator. We've actually amended the Constitution twice in the country of Mongolia. In South Korea, they've actually used this as a binding decision to make a decision of whether or not to continue building their nuclear reactors. Today, we are talking about deliberative democracy, and I was actually so encouraged to hear the Chancellor's message because civil discourse is what our lab is about. And our keynote just now, as she was saying, how do we use technology to actually help us be more intelligent, use our cognitive abilities to actually engage with each other? And that is what I'm here to talk about today. Just very quickly, our lab, Deliberative Democracy Lab at Stanford, Jim Fishkin and I run the lab together. And really, the core question that our lab is trying to answer is, what would the people think under good conditions? So everything that our keynote just said, the phones, the algorithms, all of that, what are the good conditions in your mind that people should have? When we are doing deliberative democracy, we're trying to figure out a way to bring people together, whether online or in person, and have them engage in discussion, just like the Chancellor said, dialogue with each other and have reasoned arguments, talk about the different issues that they're really confronting today, and actually build the empathy that we want to have in our society. As in the title here in your program, I'm going to talk about AI governance and the work that we've been doing in our lab. But before I hop into the different projects that we've been doing, I just wanted to share that the work that we're doing, and I'm going to show you, is just one slice of it. We do in a variety of issues: climate, immigration, abortion, all the tough issues. But today, talking about specifically technology and how we're bringing public input into the process of AI governance. But just to share why we do the work that we do. We have problems with public opinion, and many of you are here because you recognize that. And just to go through very quickly why we are doing deliberative democracy. One, rational ignorance. All of you know this term, coined by Anthony Downs, but it's basically people rationally deciding that they don't want to do something. So you're all here today, you decided to come here and to think about free speech, talk about free speech, but you have rationally decided to give up, not pay attention to all the other responsibilities that you have. And this morning, when I came in on my red eye, I decided to rationally binge on Netflix to relax, but instead of read the news. But those are decisions we make. But as a society, if we decide that we rationally will not pay attention to politics and policy as a whole, like many people do because they want to spend time with their family and their friends, they need to do work, that becomes to be a problem when you add on the second issue of phantom opinions. Phantom opinions, put simply, is opinions that don't exist. The best example of this is a survey done in 1975 called the Public Affairs Act. The punchline is the survey researchers sent this out to thousands of people. Results came in, people agreed to it, disagreed with it. Punchline is, it didn't exist. There was no Public Affairs Act. People lied. They were too embarrassed to say that they didn't know this act. And so they lied. Combined with the fact that what I just told you, people rationally ignore various issues in their lives, and then they lie about knowing about it. I mean, that's actually problematic. And then you have this third issue of communication with the like-minded. Everything that our keynote just said, we silo ourselves. We tell our newsfeed that I only want to see these cat videos and I only want to see news from this news source. And so every one of us, everyone that you're sitting next to has a different newsfeed. You have no idea what the other person read this morning in their newsfeed. And that makes living in society so difficult because you cannot relate to one another. You sat at the breakfast table this morning. Like, what do you talk about when you sit down? The weather? And then what? Because there's no shared understanding. There's no shared news headline. When you combine all these issues together, not paying attention, lying about paying attention, and really, truly living in our own silos, this is the problem with public opinion. How do you trust all the public opinion that you see in the news after knowing all these things? This is what our lab is trying to tackle, trying to bring people together so they can actually have conversation, reasoned discussions, and try to get away from these problems of public opinion. This is just a quick graphic of the deliberative polling process that our lab employs. We bring people together, we randomly select them, a nationally representative sample generally. We bring them together, and we have the surveys that we do pre-deliberation. They come together in small groups, either online or face-to-face. They have expert panels that answer questions, and then they do a pre-post survey, and we're able to track opinions after deliberation to actually see what they changed, how they changed. And I'll show you in our online platform that is AI assisted how we're actually able to show the reasoning behind why people change their opinions as well. We've done these deliberations in 50 different countries, a couple hundred times, and both in person and online. So what I'm going to share now is our AI-assisted deliberation platform. What's unique about it, we're trying to use technology to help us, is that it actually has no human moderator. So the platform operates on its own. It's built so that it's functional. The group makes decisions together. It was built with our partners at the Crowdsourced Democracy team. We've logged over 100,000 hours of deliberation on this platform, operating in 40 different countries, 35 different languages. It has a speaking queue, just like in a human moderator. You raise your hands, the platform tracks. There's agenda management. There's real-time transcription. It tracks any offensive language, and it nudges people to speak if you haven't spoken already. And we've done a variety of experiments to actually see that it performs just as well as human-moderated deliberations, and you see the same amount of opinion changes and satisfaction as well. So give you a really quick, just show you log in, just like you would in other meetings, and then there's a waiting room screen. You check your permissions, and when you get into the platform, you have a welcome video. They tell you, and we explain what the event is about. When they get onto the platform, it's just like you would in a human deliberation. And they welcome you. You see what the topic of deliberation is about, and then you engage in discussion together. This is the back end of the platform. So for the academics and researchers in here, this is what I call research heaven. We track all of the web interactions on the platform. The moment participants arrive on the platform, we know when they arrive, and what they're doing. We capture everything that people are saying in real time. So if you are observing one of our groups and you miss a group, you're in group A, you want to see group B, you can actually just see the transcript and see what's happening. So this is an advantage now that we have deliberations online. We run hundreds of groups online, and we have only a couple monitors that need to actually watch the groups because we can cycle through all the groups to see what's happening. The transcripts, as I said, they're in real time. And something that's unique to the platform is that the platform is tracking any offensive language. And the platform uses Perspectives API, which is purely AI, so it looks at the transcript to see whether it's offensive or not. And as a fun thing, I thought we could together, you could decide whether I pulled out an excerpt from the transcripts, and you can judge whether the platform would have actually flagged this person's statement as offensive. So this is from one of the deliberations that we had. I'm going to keep this interactive. Tell me, just shout it out. Do you feel like the platform would have flagged this as offensive? I'm just shaking her head here. Nope, shaking. All right. So the score is from 0 to 1. So closer to 1 means it is offensive. The platform actually flagged this as 0.71. And I put it in comparison as well of something that was flagged as 0.42. So actually, the flagging in itself, it gives a message to our backend where there are real humans that will tell us, okay, something's happening in a group. You may want to go in and take a look. But this actually did not trigger our platform to ask the rest of the group whether it was offensive or not. So what our platform has placed into the mechanics of it is not only is it tracking language, but if the platform feels that it's actually problematic, it would actually send out to the rest of the group a pop-up screen that will ask the group, we found that something was offensive, do you agree? And so it's asking for the group to decide, because just like you read this sentence and you all thought, well, no, this is not offensive at all. This person was just very excited about sharing his view. And so the platform will actually flag us. So as an example, this is another statement that was flagged by the platform. This was actually flagged at a 0.9, which is extremely high. And what happened was the platform then flagged and sent a message to all of the participants in the group and asked, there was potentially abusive language, do you all agree? And then you can see everyone in the group voted. They said, I disagree. And then when that happens, on the back end, we say, oh, well, you know what? The group doesn't agree with this, and then we ignore it and we move on. So this is the ability to actually use collective intelligence in the group to help monitor whether something was offensive or not. The reasons why we developed this AI-assisted deliberation platform was really because the engineering team that we were working with came to us about 8 years ago, and they asked us, what can technology do for democracy? How can technology support and promote democracy? We thought for a long time, and because our work is in deliberation, we immediately thought that it was the human. In order to scale deliberation, in order to scale the work that the chancellor was talking about, because even at Vanderbilt, you may not be able to get to the whole student body. And the question is, how can you use technology to actually scale the ability to allow everyone, perhaps even an entire society, to engage in deliberation together? And to do that, you have to have technology, because you can't train hundreds and thousands of human moderators. And beyond that, you can't keep the quality of that training to hundreds and thousands of moderators. So the platform is allowing us to actually have the possibility of scaling deliberation to the point that we could have millions of people deliberating together. This is another phase in our Deliberation platform where the participants actually type in questions and they will edit questions together, rank and order the questions. Also a part of Research Heaven because then we get to see people's priorities, their rankings, and really understanding what people are thinking in terms of ability of reasoning and also how they are wanting to prioritize their discussion. And if you're interested, there are a number of papers that we've written about showing the comparability of in-person and online deliberation. This is a graphic that you don't have to know too much about the numbers, but we did a controlled experiment in Finland with the parliament. About 2 years ago. The Finnish parliament were really keen on understanding whether using technology, our AI platform, to deliberate was truly comparable to having human moderated deliberation. So they commissioned our partners and I to do a controlled experiment. One group with 250 people, human moderators in person in the parliament, another group on Zoom with human moderators, and the third group on our platform. The long and short of it is our AI platform performed just as well as the human moderators and the human moderators on Zoom. They deliberated on 4 topics, and in 3 of the 4 topics, the participants, all of them, moved in the same direction and also in the same amount. So this is saying that regardless of the mode of deliberation, people are changing their opinions substantively the same amount and in the same direction. That is huge for us as we're thinking about how to scale deliberation, because this is actually showing that deliberation is possible in changing opinions just like in a human moderated setting. Other examples from our lab: we've actually amended the constitution twice in the country of Mongolia. Mongolia actually has a law on deliberative polling. For those that are in the legal field, we know how difficult it is to amend anything in any country's constitution. They've done so twice. In South Korea, they've actually used this as a binding decision to make a decision of whether or not to continue building their nuclear reactors. And since we are at a college, a year ago, we did a national event for 18-year-olds, flying in over 500 people to DC and ahead of the election so that they could come together and have a thoughtful discussion about what young people are thinking on the critical issues. Now, on democratic input into AI governance, these are just various companies that have been having their foray into democratic input: Anthropic, OpenAI, and we've been working with Meta and other companies as well. I think the conversation that we have to have as we're thinking about technology and democracy is, how does the public actually provide thoughtful input into what technology companies are doing for product and policy? We know that the government is moving slowly around the world, and the question is, how does the public get their voice in while technology is being built? How do we tell them that I don't want a companion, but I want someone to help me fix my spreadsheet? How do we get those priorities communicated through? That is what our lab is trying to do. We have been working with various companies, this one in 2023 with Meta, won 4 countries, and trying to understand the principles that should be had for guiding generative AI engagement with users. We had over 1,500 participants from 4 countries talking about what people are thinking in terms of control, transparency on these issues. And then in last year, we had 5 other countries talking about agents and their user interactions and experiences, really focusing on how people expect technology to be working with them. And I can say that I'm going to give you just a couple results to look at, and then we're going to have a more dynamic Q&A here to keep things lively. I don't know about you, but this slide is showing us the differences in views towards AI. This was from, mind you, in 2023, so 2 years ago. And you can see the dynamics that are quite different between the US and Brazil, for example. The US, a little bit more skeptical, less enthusiastic about AI, and Brazil, very enthusiastic. And we have a report on this on our website that's 100 pages long. I don't expect you to read it, but this slide actually summarizes the trends really well. Most people in the US are just not as enthusiastic about the positive impacts of AI. But in Brazil, they're extremely enthusiastic. They really want to try different types of technology, and Germany and Spain are kind of in the middle between the two countries. We asked a number of different questions. This one was about whether AI chatbots should use past conversations from users if the user is not informed. So you see a lot of red on the screen. That means they oppose this. And there's a trend, essentially, and you would expect this as you ask people, do you want to be informed or not informed when using content? Everyone is saying, I want to be informed. So the results here are really showing that people want to be informed and give consent before companies are actually using their online activity. So this is a lot of green on this slide that's saying that AI chatbots should prioritize standardized responses that do not rely on data and online activity. Here, this one is about actually the companions, which is quite surprising if you think about it. So this proposal is asking whether chatbot usage, whether the chatbot should actually express or engage the user to express their deepest thought and feelings to get the greatest potential support if the user is informed. You can see the large amount of green on the screen. This is actually people saying that if I'm informed, it's okay for the chatbot to ask me about my deepest, darkest secrets. So just let that settle in right now. I mean, it's actually not surprising. I don't know how many of you spend time with AI personas or companions. There's a reason why character AI and Replica and all of those similar companies exist and why they're so popular. And the reason why we're talking about it so much, because people seem to be really comfortable with the fact that if they know they're engaging with it, it's okay. And I think the question, as we were just listening to, is that really okay? This is my last slide, and then we're going to go in Q&A. I want to share that as our lab is engaging more in these deliberations and bringing public input in, we just had a deliberation nationally in the US about all of the different US policies that are having at the state level on AI policy. All of our states, no matter which state you're from, have an exorbitant amount of AI policies being put in legislation right now. New York State just passed one where if your company is utilizing anything like a chatbot that's asking about personal information, it has to ping you every 3 hours to tell you that I'm a chatbot. And there are so many others that are happening at your state legislature that people generally do not know about. And next month, we are actually doing an industry-wide deliberation with the company logos that are on the slide, talking about trust and safety for AI agents. I have spent the good part of this year wrangling these 6 technology companies to come together and identify the issues that they want to discuss, and they want the public to actually bring input on. And I can tell you that we emphasize with these companies that they bring proposals to the table for the public that they will execute on. And I think that is the premise that we've engaged these companies with, because I am really, truly in the business of trying to figure out how the public can be a part of the creation process of these new technologies. So while I cannot promise that the results will be binding for these companies are working very closely with their product and policy teams to make sure that at least some of them get worked through and implemented into their systems in the near future. So I'd love to open it up for questions with all of you here. I'm really curious about how you think about technology and this intersection of democracy. We've got microphones on both sides, so please feel free to grab them. There's one hand here.
Does the AI feature alter in any fashion what the participants say?
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
Nope.
Is this thing for sale?
Is it for sale? It's a great question. It is not for sale at the moment. I can say for certain, I am a true academic. I do not know how to make money. So we've been doing partnerships with a variety of folks, including these industry partners, and we're not charging a lot. But what we're really hoping is actually making sure that our partners utilize these results. So we're happy to demo these deliberations and these platforms to you, but if you have ideas of how I can make money, please let me know.
Hi, thanks so much. Amy Mitchell, Center for News Technology and Innovation. Thank you for this. It's really, I've been really interested in what the lab is doing, and this is a wonderful sort of layout of the work. I have a question and then maybe a second question on the first. In the deliberations in the online platform, I'm curious, when there's a flag to the point where the AI asks, do the other participants in there, see the responses of every individual, or are they asked in private? And does the person who made the comment get a vote? That's question one. And then the other is on the part of how to get the public engaged in the creation. Again, like fabulous goal and so important. And we know as researchers, there's this tension between what the public can articulate in terms of what they want and then what they actually do, right? Think of TikTok. I mean, what would people have said? Would they have asked for something like that? And so I'd be curious how you have planned to then in the experimentation study, if there are things that are implemented, do they actually get used by a significant portion of the public? Thanks.
No, that's a great. So the first question, the answers to the flag are private. So it only pops onto your screen, and then you decide if you agree or disagree. The person that is accused of making the offensive language does not get a vote, but they are notified that there is a vote that is happening. And just to follow up, even though you didn't ask, if something bad had happened, there is a process. We can ban users, usually ban their microphone for a certain amount of time, and the person does get notified that they're being banned. Of the 100,000 plus hours that we've ran deliberations, we've only ever had to kick out one person, and that was not because of what they said. So it's been I would say really surprising how well behaved everyone is. And on your second question, I would say that we are so for the participants and their feedback, we actually do feedback loops with the participants so they can see the results of their deliberation and potentially what has been implemented. So the participants themselves actually get to see and know what kind of results happen. We've been trying to get our industry partners to be more public about the parts of implementation that have happened. So I know there have been product and policy teams that have utilized the results to impact their internal processes, but those have not been made public. So unfortunately, I've been encouraging people to make the connections so there's more trust and more interest in actually participating in this. But the feedback loops to participants is the best we're able to do at the moment.
Hi, I'm wondering about, this is closely related to the previous question, sort of if this was to be implemented sort of like in the wild, the idea of like keyboard warriors who sometimes flood people's comments, report them for stuff that should not be reportable, and if the AI can flag it accurately, and when it asks people if they think it's offensive, can tell whether or not those people are being truthful, and sort of the idea of like not having a human be a part of that to determine whether or not this is actually being used correctly, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So we don't have that problem because these are video-based discussions. These are live, synchronous, video-based discussions. And I think that it is, so what you're describing is very concerning. And I think that the asynchronous text-based discussion platforms face that issue a lot because you have to decide how to content moderate. But we are really in the business of doing live, synchronous deliberations to avoid what you're just describing. It is harder to do. It is more expensive to do. And in full transparency, we pay all of our participants. So we recognize that they spend at least 5 to 6 hours with us. So this is not a easy lift by any means for participants, and we pay them for the time that they spend with us, usually on a weekend.
Hi, Keith Riles, University of Michigan. In calibrating your AI's offensiveness meter, how do you account for the enormous, well, what I would think would be enormous variance across gender and age and maybe socioeconomic background?
I think what is really great in the detector is because it detects, but it also is asking the group. And on the platform, not only do we have the transcript, but we also have the audio recording. So the monitors are us, the staff. If a flag happens, we can actually not only see the text, but we listen to the audio immediately so that we can actually determine whether something is actually serious. So I think the combination of the text, the audio, and also the group decision, because they know best, they were in the small group, that I think that helps with making sure the right decision is made.
Yes, thank you very much. Dan Coughing with Open Vetting. My curiosity is, because I'm familiar with Polis and a lot of other citizen deliberative technologies, they are both a theory change as well as sort of elaborate polling, sentiment gathering kind of tool sets. Have you explored down the truth-seeking aspect, which is a little bit orthogonal to participation, I should say, where we're like, no, truth is reductive, it's exclusionary, it's trying to get at a thing that's more true than the last thing. And so I was wondering whether or not that had fallen into your gamut or not, and I'm being beyond fact-checking at this point, but actually truth-seeking exercises.
Yeah, we have not done, the deliberations we usually do are not truth-seeking exercises. They're usually deliberating about specific proposals, whether you should increase the number of visas for a certain group of people, or join a certain UN agreement. So they're very specific things that they're doing. However, in the qualitative work that we do after deliberation, that is where we've been able to look at how groups are reaching, if they're reaching an agreement, how they're getting there, what types of arguments are drawing people in. This is where the research of it is more exciting, because we're actually able to look at the pro statements, the con statements, the variety, the balance of them, and how it's driving the different groups to reach different decisions. So in the behind the scenes work, we're able to study that, but in the actual deliberations that participants are engaged in, they're not doing that.
Hi, that's over here. So I'm really curious about, to what end are you rating offensive comments? So I'm a civil liberties lawyer, so everything that we know about speech is that it's only offensive speech that really gets censored. And I'm curious about that. To what end do you want to rate whether or not something's offensive? And if you've considered, you stated that one person was kicked out and it wasn't related to their speech. To what extent do you think perhaps people are already perhaps self-censoring because they know their comments are being rated, and they're also being paid? So if they are kicked out, they will not be paid.
So the paying, the paying part is actually they do still get paid. So because we have university research protocol, as long as they are participating and they fulfilled, they did the number of sessions, then they do get paid. So that single person that was ever kicked out was actually paid. The first question about to what end. So the participants actually don't know that there's some kind of rating system, because we're just asking them to deliberate and discuss. So what we're trying to make sure is, just like a human moderator would, if they felt like someone's said a curse word that affected another person, the human moderator would probably say, "Oh, please respect the group and try not to use offensive language." That's what the human moderator would likely say. And that's the same thing that platform is trying to do, is to keep track of what's being said. And if something is offensive, then the group actually, in their individual pop-ups, they would click, "Oh, this was offensive," or "No, this was not offensive." And if the group is deciding that, "Nope, it's not offensive," then that's okay. But if the group is deciding that something is offensive, that's when we have to jump in as monitors to say, "Oh, we noticed that something that your group has actually indicated that something was offensive. Could you please," we will probably just warn them and say, "Could you please be respectful of your group?" So I would say, I don't think it's to what end. I think it's really, we're mimicking what a human moderator would do in those situations.
Hi. I'm not sure if you already said this or went over this in your speech, but is it possible for the AI models to learn from false input? Like, if there is blatant hate speech, but everyone else in the group says it's not hate speech, can it learn from say that is not actually hate speech in another situation in which it would be offensive to the other people in the group?
That's a really good question. Our AI model is not that sophisticated. And I should say that there are models that obviously do that. That's what language models do. But we have not inserted that technology into our deliberation. I think a lot of people have asked us, how are you using language models to do this? Can't you just put a chatbot in there to moderate the discussions? And from our point of view, as the keynote said, technology is used as an assistant. That's our belief. I think the deliberation itself and how the group actually conducts itself, the humans should be a part of that decision. So we have not.
Hi, over here. Hi, Kieran Cardle. I'm a freelance trust and safety consultant. I was wondering what your view is on what sorts of problems this process is suitable for and which sorts of problems it isn't. Because what comes to mind with this is it's tyranny of the majority when technology is inherently fungible. We could have multiple AIs that respect one that respects what the 20% wants, one that respects what the 80% wants. And I was also wondering whether you could, as a thought experiment, backtest this. So what would happen if, say, you fed civil rights discussions through this in the 70s? Would it have come out most people think equal rights are bad? And things like this. To what extent is tyranny by the majority a risk here?
It's an interesting. We can run experiments to actually do this. I would say, because we bring together actual random samples of the public to engage in these discussions, it's really about the discussions, the proposals, and what they are thinking. And it has really little to do with the technology itself, because the technology is just facilitating the discussion to happen. So I would say that the technology itself doesn't actually affect the discussion because the humans are the ones that are providing the content for the discussion. There's no AI that's telling the humans what to say or anything like that. So I would say in terms of the actual topics and how the discussion would go, that is something up for experimentation to see. And I think we've done such a variety of topics that I can share, what the results have been like for the variety of topics that we've actually done. And I see that there's a flashing number, so I should stop and turn this back to our host. Thank you so much for your time today.